Hello and welcome again to my channel. I'd like to, my name's Tony Pereira. Those of you who follow me, thank you. This is the channel where I provide value in terms of property, business, just general advice in business. But in particular today, I'd like to talk to people who are new to property or looking to get started in property, and just sort of highlight the things that I did alongside my journey, and the techniques that you can get started, because obviously there's a concept that you need a lot of money to start in property, and in some circumstances you do, depending on what strategy you do, but with other things you don't. Now, a few of the techniques that you can use within property is what I'm going to talk about sort of today. Now, the first one is something called sourcing. Now, sourcing is basically where you, as a property professional, whether you're new, experienced, would go out and find a property for a potential investor, or someone with a with a specific sort of criteria in terms of what you're looking at. Now, that investor may be someone who's very time poor, and you may be someone who has got some time, or even if you are working, you can set aside that time to find the properties. Now, sourcing, as I said, don't get me wrong, is a great strategy, because you can make on average between £3,000 and £5,000 per deal. Now, to actually get started in sourcing, it could be ranging from zero, as in complete zero, but obviously you would have to invest your time, and depending on what kind of level you want to get up to, it could go between zero, but it could go up to around £1,500 or so, but depending on the level that you do. But as I said, you can get started in sourcing for nothing, okay, depending on how you structure it. Now, I'll start first with how you would get started in sourcing for nothing. So when you're sourcing, as property professionals or estate agents, there are certain licenses, accreditations that you would need to apply for, to be to do sourcing in the right way. There are a few sources that do source but are not compliant as such, so do be wary of them if you're the investor, because as I said, if they're not compliant, they may be sourcing you a property that doesn't quite match up to what it's supposed to be. So I strongly recommend you find a source that is compliant, so always do your due diligence. But with people who don't actually have the money to start up, you can do something called co-sourcing, which is something that I did. So I source properties for someone who is already compliant, and also the added advantage of that is that they have an existing database. So which is another thing that you probably would need when you're getting started in sourcing, and you may not necessarily have that straight away, so you may need to build on that. So whilst you're getting started, you can start making some nice fees from the sourcing. So as I said, roughly per deal, between £3,000 and £5,000. Now let's say it's a £5,000 deal, which is actually fairly average, you know, for the types of deals that you probably will be sourcing. So that would mean, you know, depending, let's say it's a 50-50 split, that would mean £2,500 per month, which, you know, on if you look at an average salary, that's probably about as much, you know, someone would get per month, you know, and which is probably on, you know, on the sort of medium to high scale. So you know, if you're sort of starting out, then that could be a nice, you know, that's just one deal, you know. So if you had, you know, a couple of those a month, that's you know, a great wage, you know, great wage, and a way to get started in property, and also it will give you a much better understanding. Yeah. Now, depending on what your goals are, I mean, obviously sourcing is a really good way to sort of start. Now, I hope that kind of you know, answers that in terms of the sourcing strategy. And any questions that you have, please feel free to like, comment, and you know, please do ask any questions that you may have. Now, the other way that you could get started in property is something called rent to rent. Now, I wouldn't say rent to rent is completely, you know, completely, you know, zero money down, but I would say it's less. There's less of an investment than you know, purchasing, depending on where you're doing it. And let's take, for example, London. Now, in London, you're looking at an average, you know, price of between, I would say, between 400,000 to 500,000 for a, you know, for an average 3 to 4 bed, which means that you're going to need about £100,000 in terms of a deposit. Now, with a rent to rent deal, you're probably looking at between 10 to 15,000 to get into the deal, depending on how you structure it. And obviously, if you are not sure how to structure rent to rent, then I'd definitely recommend you doing a course. And as I said, please do comment, like, share, and you know, if you do have a question in terms of who you'd like to use, do get in touch, and I'll be sure to be able to give you a few options in terms of where you could start looking and deciding on who you'd like to train you. So that's basically how rent to rent. Now, with rent to rent, obviously, the concept is basically you're renting a property from an existing landlord, vendor as such, and giving them a guaranteed rent over a number of months or years, depending on what you agree. Now, I would always, you know, consult someone who's done rent. If you're new to rent, I would never suggest doing it purely off, you know, on your own, but do get some help. So as I said, please feel free to ask any questions that, you know, I could help with, especially if you're getting in, you know, if you're getting into it for the first time. You know, please do, you know, ask the question if you're not sure. And if I don't know, I always would know someone that can help. So don't be shy, and you know, please do ask. So that is a good strategy. As I mentioned, it's you know, much less costly, and obviously, as we know, the demand in London is fairly good. So you know, you could be looking at a return of, you know, approximately you know, nearly 10%, you know, 10 to 15% ROI, if not more. And if you look at it in pounds and pence, you could be looking at, on average, between £600 to £800 per month per property. So if you had 2 or 3 of those, that's like a, you know, a monthly wage. So that would be, you know, which would be fantastic. So you know, that's where that's how you, couple of strategies that you could get started with within property. Now you may be wondering about finance. I previously posted a video in terms of how you would get started without any of your own money, so please do check out that video. And as I said, any comments, please do, or any questions that you have, please don't be afraid to get in touch. But I hope that video's been useful. If you don't subscribe to the channel, please do. If you find this of value, please do subscribe, or at least give us a like to show us that you are listening in. And any comments that anybody has got, I would always look forward to any positive comments. Okay, thanks again, and I will look forward to seeing you all on the next video.